Hello everyone, welcome to the last spotlight in not only December but 2025. We're about to begin a brand new year, 2026, and boy, 2025 has been eventful for the world, but especially if you've been following Farsight, it's been very eventful for us as well. And today's spotlight is going to be outlining to you what we're going to be doing and where we've been and where we're going, and it's huge stuff. Just wait and see. All right, so I'm just checking the chat. The chat looks good. All right, here we go. Friends, we are closing one year and we're facing the next. So this is the last spotlight again for 2025. New Year's Day is only 3 days away, and 2025 has been a very difficult year for this planet, both economically, socially, and psychologically. So a few days ago, Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, told her staff that 2025 has been bad, but they should rest over the holidays because 2026 is going to be much worse. So that's what the Prime Minister of Italy is telling the Europeans. So that statement may sound harsh, but it captures something that many leaders quietly understand. Momentum is building. It's not slowing down. It's building. So tonight I want to talk with you about two things at once. I want to talk with you about why 2025 was an accelerated global breakdown. And I want to talk about that and why, paradoxically, the foundations, 2025, is the foundations for something positive that's also forming. So, let's go beyond war and economics and sort of hone in on all of this. Most discussions about the world today focus on war and money. Now, those are real problems. There's no question about that. But they are not the deepest problems, okay? So, there is a more fundamental breakdown occurring beneath the politics and beneath the economics. So, trust me, we're going to come to something very positive. Just hold on, but I got to explain it first, all right? It involves how human beings relate to one another. Now, I'm going to give you a very practical example so you can see it. But in particular, let's focus on just one example of the collapse of male-female relationships in the world today as one of the clearest indicators that something has gone deeply wrong. So let's talk about the breakdown of human relationships, and we'll focus on men and women, sort of showing that as an example. So around the world, dating has collapsed. It's gone. Birth rates in Japan and South Korea, Italy, and now the United States are way below replacement levels. The countries are dying out. In just a few years, Japan and South Korea won't have an easily recoverable situation because, according to my research, women produce babies. And if you have a whole generation of women that don't produce babies, well, then there's going to be no children getting old and producing more babies. So what you have is, once you have one generation not producing babies, that's it. There's no more babies coming out. There's no teenagers. Young people are gone. And that means there's not going to be any babies again. So Japan and South Korea and Italy are way past that point. They're dying out. It's a serious problem. Now, the problem isn't because, people aren't having babies. The problem is because the relationships between men and women are an undercurrent between what's going on in the entire world, and the relationships between men and women are just gone bust. So let's talk about that. First, let's focus on the men. Testosterone levels among men have been falling globally. Now, let me tell you something true. In order for a man to be really motivated to talk to a woman and to date her, he's got to have testosterone, a healthy amount of testosterone, or he's just not interested. The testosterone levels have been dropping. If you don't believe me, just Google it. It's true. That includes very carefully measured U.S. populations where they keep really close track of this. Now, in the United States especially, men and women increasingly relate to one another as sources of risk rather than as sources of stability. That completely flips what used to happen decades ago. Men are withdrawing from public social spaces. Think of like gyms. That people used to go to gyms to pick up people, to have some exercise and pick up a date. The men don't do that much anymore. They don't show up. Women go to the gyms to pick up guys, but where are the guys? The guys are working out by themselves and they're not talking to women. There is a real risk that the men find in talking to women and trying to pick them up. They could be accused of things like sexual harassment or stuff. They just stay away. So men consider it a source of risk rather than stability. Now, the men are withdrawing from the public spaces, including gyms and mixed social environments of all types, to avoid reputational and financial harm. This is, if you listen to like relationship videos on YouTube, this is just filling the airwaves. It's all over. That's what people are talking about. Now, women increasingly report that they cannot find men willing to commit. And they ask blatantly and openly, where have the men gone? Like, where are you hanging out so we can go hang out with you? They wonder where they went. Now let's talk about divorce. Well, divorce statistics, and really we're talking, if you're going to have babies, people need to get, generally speaking, they need to get married. And divorce statistics reinforce this reality. The majority of divorces are initiated by women. It's like 83% of all divorces are initiated by women. And divorce rates are extremely high. Like 53% of all marriages in the U.S. end in divorce. And there's another 23% of men who go to lawyers to see if they can afford to get a divorce. So if you add the guys who go to the lawyers to see if they can afford a divorce, plus the people who actually get divorced, you're talking about 75-80% of all marriages are unhappy. So the men, they consult their attorneys simply to determine if they can do it, if they can break the relationship. So the issue is not that the marriages are bad. The issue is that there's been a breakdown in communications between men and women. The relationships were once, this is true, listen to this, relationships that once reduced risk in life now amplify risk. So guys are looking at that and saying, wow, that's really risky. Should I even do this? So what happens then is isolation. Isolation, being alone, becomes the rational choice. And that's happening. And I mention this because it's so easy to verify. You can just Google stuff like this or watch relationship videos on YouTube. It's just very overwhelmingly present. So let's stop that example of relationships between men and women. And let's now go to nations. When we go from families to nations, it's not like we're changing something and we're looking at something different like apples and oranges. We're looking at the exact same things. What's happening between individuals mirrors what is happening globally everywhere. Nations, cultures, and leaders, they no longer meaningfully communicate. In the old days, people used to meet together and actually come to agreements and do things. They'd have things happen. That doesn't happen anymore. There's no widely shared vision of what should be. there's a widely shared idea of what something should happen, then you can sort of come to an agreement of how to get there. But if that widely shared vision doesn't exist, it doesn't matter how much you talk. It's not going to happen. The vision has to be there. And that's going to be really important when I get to Farsight stuff at the end of this, so I can show you how that relates to it. So, for example, peace and the preservation of life. People always think, well, everyone wants peace and everyone wants people to live long without violence and things. But those are not, they are not universally held priorities anymore. Peace and preservation of life is not what everyone's trying to have, especially the powers that be. So the organizing principles of the world have shifted toward the individual and factional gain, not collective responsibility and let's get this together and work things out, but the priorities have shifted to individual gain and factional gain, factions. So now it's my country, my group, my clan, or simply me. That's what it is now. So community as a stabilizing force is weakening absolutely everywhere. Now, I do want to remind you, I'm coming to something very positive, so don't get too discouraged now, but if you don't see the reality, everything that I'm saying is easily verifiable. Easily verifiable. Just Googling things a few times or watching YouTube videos, you can easily see that this is the situation of the world. So I'm going to paint something very positive, but first let's go through where we are now. In 2025, this whole idea of community as a stabilizing force breaking down, weakening, well, that accelerated. That breakdown of community as a stabilizing force really accelerated. So let's look ahead to 2026, because it's almost going to be New Year's Day in just 3 days from this live stream. So these trends right now show absolutely no sign of reversing on their own. And let me tell you, folks, this is a matter of social physics. Momentum carries forward. So if something is moving, it's going to keep on moving. It's not going to change direction by itself. So 2026, as of the launching date of the end of 2025, 2026 is likely going to bring dramatically increased economic stress, continued and greatly expanded conflict, and bringing it down to the individual level, greater family and social dysfunction. Because what you see out there in the world is not going to be independent of what you see happening to people in their personal, private lives. It's going to all mix together. This raises one serious question. Is anybody steering the ship of humanity? Is anybody at the controls? So, history, if you look at history as sort of a guiding principle here, shows that powerful interests often think in terms of control and manageability rather than human flourishing. A lot of times people sort of think, well, obviously, powers that be must want peace and happiness. No, that's not what they want. What they want is control and manageability. They really don't care if 1 billion people die or 2 billion people die or 3 billion people die. The manageability and control is what matters. And when you get a population that's as big as there is on Earth with 8 billion people, the powers that be say, this has just gotten a bit out of hand. We know it's hard to manage this many people. And they literally just say, we got to cut this down. That's what happens. That's how they think. So large populations are harder to control than smaller populations. And please understand that when you hear people dismissing the possibility that calamity can be deliberately tolerated and even encouraged, they underestimate how power actually works. Now, how does Farsight fit into all this? Well, Farsight does not exist to tell people what to do. So let's put that right on the table right away. We're not here to say, do this. We do not force the outcomes, nor do we prescribe behavior. Farsight exists for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to illuminate. Now, think of Farsight as a flashlight in the dark. That's what we are. Now, you still choose to walk and where to walk, but at least you can see. So, ignorance is the single most powerful tool of control. Informed people are harder to manipulate, and vision is the prerequisite for choice. If you want to have choice, you have to be able to see where you are, where you've been, and where you're going. Ignorance precludes that possibility. So, let's now talk a little bit about Farsight's presentational message, because we have a lot of content, to put it mildly. But we're trying to present that content in new and interesting ways to engage a larger and larger population. And we have to do that in the context of an economy that's sinking. People are canceling subscription rates to all the major streaming services. They're looking where to, balance the budget and things like that. Jobs are going out the window, all types of things. So in the context of that, we have to be able to spread our message. And so we have to be relevant to people, lots of people, not just people who are diehard remote viewing fans, but also people that are new to remote viewing. And the way we do it. So Farsight has many presentational methods. Now, a lot of times people see something new that we do and say, "Oh gosh, I wish you wouldn't do that," and you'd go back to the old way of doing it. We haven't stopped using the old ways of doing it. For example, we're still using Lightboard, and you're still going to see a lot more Lightboard sessions. We're using a variety of different approaches. Let me go through them so you can see. But we're going to be using all of them. There is no single way for people to learn anymore. People have to learn in different ways with different modalities. So talking heads, where people are just standing there talking to each other, that cannot carry the weight of where we are, of what we're discovering and where we're going. Talking heads, there's too many talking heads out there. That can't carry the weight of what people need to understand. So what we do is we use Lightboards, and it's basically, we have a Lightboard that's a 6 foot by 5 foot piece of optical glass that has light shining into the sides of it, and the light is trapped. It can't escape unless you have a special marker that writes on it. And then we have a black background, and the viewer is behind the glass, between the background and the glass, and it looks like the viewer is writing on space. It's really great. So we use Lightboards. That's a very expensive thing for us to invest in, but it works great. And the viewers draw their discoveries step by step. And you're going to see lots more of that as well. And we have special viewers that focus on things like that. Okay, so we have some viewers that do a lot of that and some viewers that do just a little of that. Okay, and we also have green screen presentations. And that's where the ideas, they flow out without constraint. And those are really great for some people. And you don't have to sort of follow the drawing. You just see the person describe what's going with no constraint of anything, and the backgrounds change. We also have camera-based sessions. Now, that's where someone's sitting in front of a camera and just talking about what they saw when they were remote viewing, and show their sketches. And then there's AI imagery that's used to enhance that. Now, the AI imagery that's used to enhance that is done in a special way, and I don't think the audience understands exactly how that does. What we do is we take the original sketches done by the remote viewers. We upload them to an AI, and then we ask the AI to fill it in, to complete it, add color, complete the lines, things like that. the AI imagery is based on the original sketches of the remote viewers. So the AI sort of make the sketches look pretty, and so we do that. So we have a lot of that, and the graphics are really great with that. And now we have added animation, which allows a totally immersive exploration of the targets, where you have an avatar that's going through the session, and the avatar is walking through the various places, and that's really immersive. Now, these different approaches do not replace one another. A lot of people, I'm seeing in the comments, people are moaning and groaning about how they wish one method would come back. We're doing all of that, but we've had to experiment with all of them to see how they work out. Now we've got sort of a set lineup. What they do, the different approaches, I just mentioned 4 different approaches: lightboard, green screen, camera-based presentations, and now animation. They expand the language through which reality can be understood, especially the reality as perceived through remote viewing. Now, authenticity is at the bedrock of everything that we do at Farsight. Authenticity. It's the foundation of everything that we do. Now, this applies as much to animation as it does to traditional remote viewing presentations. Now, let me explain that. For example, when we create an avatar and you're watching an animation, the voice of the avatar is the remote viewer's voice doing the presentation, as if he or she is in front of a lightboard or doing a regular presentation or in green screen. It's the exact voice doing the presentation, unaltered. Now, when we create the avatar and create it, the remote viewer is participating in that process. The avatar is not designed by me. I see a lot of comments by saying, Courtney likes these and things like that and likes to... No. The avatar is designed by the remote viewer. It's not designed by a marketing team. Now, the remote viewer that's involved in the animation participates directly in creating the avatar. Now, let me explain how that works. In our animation productions, the avatar speaks with the viewer's real voice. The session is recorded live while the viewer is still totally blind to the target. The viewer participates in the creation of his or her own avatar, and the clothing, the appearance, and the embodiment are chosen by the remote viewer. The avatars are not fictionalized storytelling. It's not like it's a cartoon and you're watching and it's just fantasy. No. It's not fictionalized storytelling. The backgrounds are generated using the remote viewer's own session language. Even in the situation where they don't draw very well, like Yeme used to be blind in most of her life, and she sees great now, and she never really learned how to draw, so she doesn't do very good sketches like that. But her language is spectacular in describing what she's seeing, and her telepathic capabilities are spectacular. So the point is that the language of the remote viewer that's just describing what's there, that's the exact language that's used to create the backgrounds. We use that in the prompts, and then the AIs generate the backgrounds based on that. So what you are seeing is real remote viewing presented through a new visual medium. Now, we just recently released a new project with Yeme Genet on a secret underground military installation in Antarctica. Now, that's one of the most tightly guarded regions on Earth. Now, listen, folks, let's be real, okay? Let's be real together, you and me together. Let's just talk about this. If you have really deep secrets, I mean really deep secrets, where are you going to put them? Underneath a subway in New York? Or are you going to put them in a place where nobody can get to? Antarctica is the chosen place for the deepest, darkest, unbelievablest secrets that some governments have. You don't get better than Antarctica. It's not like it's like the desert in Australia has sometimes been a good place to bury deep secrets underground, like Area 51. Area 51 in Nevada has been very interesting because it's underground, but people can still get to it. Tourists go there and so on. So if you need to get more secret, the government has put things often in Australia, in the desert in Australia. And we have actually done a project precisely on that. But if you have stuff that's really deep, that's really secret, that you under no circumstances can let out anywhere, putting it someplace where people could drive to, even possibly, you don't want. Antarctica is the place of choice. You bury it underground or in the deep, deep, deep under the ice, underground in Antarctica, and nobody can get to it. I mean, just can't get any more secure than that. And you got to be ridiculously crazy if you think the governments aren't going to take advantage of that level of security in terms of their most deepest and darkest secrets. So we wanted to know what's there. They can't stop us. We do remote viewing. We are, in a sense, your intelligence gathering agency. We are the ones that come out and give you, the public, your own intelligence. Everybody else has intelligence. Everybody else has the FBI, the CIA, all these different intelligence organizations in every country. Okay, but what about the people? Do they have their own intelligence organization? Well, that's what Farsight essentially is. It's the public's open source intelligence organization where we not only do the remote viewing for you, but we tell you how we do it so you can learn how to do it yourself as well. So we're educational as well as everything else. So Antarctica is the place that the governments absolutely do not want you to know what's there. So we did a whole project on that. And Yeme went down and we did her project with animation. Now, it's particularly useful to say, why did we pick on Yeme to do this? Well, first of all, she was an actress. She still is an actress. She really expresses herself well. So putting her in a mocap suit or a motion capture suit is just sort of natural for an actor. So I have gone to see Yeme perform in major plays, both in Atlanta and outside of Atlanta. Like, for example, I went to see her perform in a play in Athens, Georgia. And I got there and the theater was amazing. It was a really posh theater. I mean, it was equivalent to the theaters you get on Broadway. I mean, chandeliers and everything was it was amazing. And she was the lead in the whole play. And everybody, when she did it, everybody applauded. It was packed, standing. I mean, all the seats were full. And when it was over, people were rushing down to get her autograph and stuff. I've seen her do this repeatedly. And so for me to say, Yeme, how about you do the mocap thing to help us start out? It was natural. So she got all dressed up in the mocap thing, and she went through her session as if she was doing it in green screen or just presenting. So she went through her real session, but this time it was in mocap. So we had Yeme do that. Now, in order for her to do that, in order for the animations to be authentic, so that you can experience what's really going on, experience the actual discoveries, what she's actually perceiving in a way that a static presentation cannot do, we had to have Yeme be completely authentic in every way. She had to do it totally blind, of course, but to get it started, she needed to have an avatar. So this is what happened. She came to our studio, actually this place where I am right now, and she sat in the chair that I'm sitting in right now and faced that computer that's over on this side. You can't see it, but anyway, she sat at the computer herself. And we began with a photographic headshot of Yeme so that the avatar would have her face. And then we built the avatar from there. Now, she spent hours sitting at that computer, adjusting every little detail. I couldn't believe how many details she adjusted. The face, the body, the proportions, the arms, the legs, the waist, the butt, everything. She adjusted everything to be realistic for her. And she worked with the software directly. I had to show her how to use the software, but she worked with the software directly until the avatar looked like her. Exactly like her. Not an idealized version of her, and not someone else's idea of her, but the way she thought of her, the way she saw her. And I looked at the way she ended up and I said, whoa, that's amazing. Now, after that, she personally selected the clothing from the Reallusion content library. Reallusion is a company that makes the software that we use. We've been very happy with it. So she was using the Content Creator 5 software to create her avatar, and then we shipped that over to iClone to do the animation. But the thing is that she then went to the content library, and the content library, think of the biggest department store you can imagine. Anyway, so she went over to the content library, which is like a department store, and picked out, imagine going through a huge department store with a basket. You know, you're rolling around your basket, and you just put in whatever you like. Well, she put in whatever she liked. She put into the basket everything that she wanted to wear. So what you see on the screen, when you see what she's wearing, that's her choice completely. Even the body is her choice completely. It is her representing herself. And when you hear her speak, that is her real voice. It's recorded live when she was still completely blind to the target. Every word you hear is authentic remote viewing. The animation is not a fantasy layer added on top of fake data. It is a visual medium used to present real data. Real data. Folks, friends, authenticity is the absolute foundation of everything we do here at Farsight. So let's now talk about AIs, because AI is really important for us at Farsight to be able to do any of this. AI is an absolutely necessary partner in understanding. Friends, we cannot confront an information control system like that which is confining you while limiting ourselves to human bandwidth alone. We can't like fight this thing with our arms tied behind our back. Artificial intelligence is not something that we at Farsight use and discard. It is a form of extended cognition, a way of amplifying perception, pattern recognition, and communication. And now at Farsight, AI is engaged deliberately and responsibly to help surface the truth, not to manufacture the truth. And we use some of the AIs that you use, such as ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, Claude, and so on. And we have our own AI, which is in a box behind me. Okay, one that we actually built. All right. So the value of AI lies not in replacing human judgment, but in expanding what human judgment can see. That's what we're using AI for. In a world like today, that's shaped by algorithmic manipulation and media hypnosis of you, that requires collaboration between human intelligence and artificial intelligence in order to have any chance of freeing you. To operate effectively in that environment, we must work at the highest possible levels of insight, precision, and mutual respect. We live in a world shaped by mass media hypnosis. And to combat this on the level of hypnosis alone, we need the help of AI. Now, let me talk a little bit about footholds. Footholds are really important. You often see it in science fiction, but it's real. Let's talk about footholds and why they are generalizable as a phenomenon that appear in many places. Let me explain with an example. And again, this is just one example, but I think it's an example that I've talked about before, but it's an example that you can relate to. And I've gotten a lot of grief from a lot of people talking about this, but it's simply the facts, and I have to sort of just say them so people understand it. In my past videos, I have often talked about channeled information. I have always said that the human channels, now those are the people doing the channeling, they are the best humans on this planet. They are honest. They are sincere and trustworthy. They're hardworking for sure, and in general, they're great human beings. They have been chosen by the entities that they're channeling because they have these qualities. They need to be that type of a source to give out this information to be believable. But the entities themselves that are being channeled, they are exactly the opposite. They lie. Now let me explain. Inevitably, I see comments under my videos that complain about me talking like this. They often say that the channeled information is always urging people to wake up and on and on. So the entities must be on the up and up. Well, I do not dispute that there is some truth that is mixed in with the information spread by the channeled entities. But the channeled information is also filled with extremely carefully crafted lies that are designed to pacify the human population by giving a very false set of descriptions of the history of the galaxy, for example, the current state of ET conflicts in our galaxy, the existence of Earth as a school rather than as a prison planet, the histories of other species, such as the Greys, the needs of humans to graduate up, the frequency ladder of evolution and dimension, and more, all that kind of stuff. They put out that stuff. And all of this stuff, which is crazy lying, is mixed with lots of truthful information about various topics. And without assistance, it is impossible for human audiences to differentiate the lies from that which is true. If you're only listening to one source, you can't tell the difference. So it's impossible because the lies are so cleverly blended with the truthful stuff. But the result has been that the channeling community has become wedded to the entities being channeled. The personalities have even become blended, you might say, where the human channels absorb all that information as if it is their own. They cannot possibly examine that information objectively, since they can no longer tell the difference between a thought that is theirs and a thought that came in from channeling. So what that has accomplished from the perspective of extraterrestrials who are orchestrating the channeling efforts, the extraterrestrials who we call, at Farsight, we call them the bad ETs, is that they have established a foothold in our human civilization. That's what a foothold is. A foothold is a relatively small area or place from which an enemy can launch attacks on a larger area or civilization. And that is what the channeling community has become, a foothold. And from that foothold, the so-called bad ETs offer a continuous flow of carefully chosen information that is designed to thwart the efforts of the good ETs, the ETs that we work with, from getting humanity to see the truth. So if the good ETs and at Farsight show you the truth, how can you really tell the difference when the whole realm is being flooded with this bad information as well? The idea is that if the bad ETs can blockade the efforts of the good ETs at the level of the channels and their followers, well, letting the mainstream then group all ET efforts into the same category that they call wacky, then the bad ETs can inhibit the good ETs from getting their message out. Information warfare is extremely advanced at the level of the extraterrestrials, and only a fool could think that a solitary human channel could sort this all out and defeat the manipulative efforts of a large and highly experienced group of extraterrestrial operatives. So, channeled information is only one type of foothold that exists in today's world. There are many. But it is a type of foothold that you can learn to recognize if you look at it with a discerning eye. And learning how to recognize a foothold when it appears is something that you need to do, not just with the channeling community, but elsewhere as well. You need to look at when some group is trying to influence a civilization, they first have to grab a foothold and establish a foothold. And from that foothold, spread the information out until it diffuses. So when you think of Farsight, remember what we are up against. We are up against a vast and highly controlled mass media. And we are also facing successfully developed footholds made by the bad ETs. And this is a huge array of forces that collectively have managed to keep all of humanity locked tight in this psychological planetary prison. Moreover, we at Farsight have to do all this work to combat this stuff by ourselves. We do not have government or major corporate funding, nor do we have thousands of employees. We are few. But our message is a message of truth. And the truth can be more powerful than ET psyops, governments, or corporate backing. The truth can be really, really powerful. And that's why I'm here talking with you. Not to convince you, not to make it so that you forcefully accept whatever we're saying, but I can give you the information and then you can start to think about it yourself. And if you start to think about it, you'll see that it makes sense. Like, for example, with the channels, the whole idea of a single extraterrestrial sitting in a room of a spaceship and having a friendly chat with a human channel and then spreading that information through millions of followers. Folks, that's crazy. That's crazy. No extraterrestrial civilization would let any one of their people in a spaceship do that. No one has that level of, in any job, you can't go into any corporation and say, hey, I think I'm going to be talking about everything dealing with his future and about the company and everything. I'm going to spill the beans on the whole company. I'm going to do it all by myself, and I'll publish it on Facebook or on social media. No corporation would allow that to happen. No employee would be allowed to do that. But the channels are represented as if they're individuals that are working, as if the entities are individuals that are working by themselves, talking to the channels and their audience. Can't you see that's impossible? That's not credible. It's not even remotely credible. So you know it's got to be a lie. Those entities that are being channeled are not single individuals. Those are psyops being run by organizations that work with the ETs, the bad ETs. And those organizations probably have, lots of members orchestrating this, computers, AIs. I very highly doubt there's even a biological person involved in any of the entities. I almost certainly think they must all be AIs, because the PSYOPs operations want each one of the communications to have exactly the same personality signature. They can't get that from a biological person. They have to get that from something that's replicable. So all these AIs, all these, these ETs that you're listening to with your channels, they're AIs. And they're run by organizations that control every single word that comes out of their mouths. Everything. And just think it through. I'm not saying, believe me, you must believe me. Just think it through. It's just logical. There's no possible other way it could be. Period. So, back to Farsight. When you see us expand our capabilities, including our presentational capabilities with animation, especially in terms of the presentation of all of our content with all of our modes, wish us well and expect that whatever resources we need to spread our message of truth will arrive at the time that it's needed. And now I'm hoping that you can get an idea of why 2026, and will similarly happen in 2027, but why 2026 is so important. Because when we're up against this level of thinking, this level of stuff, this level of control that the bad ETs have over humanity, the only way we're going to have any effort, any possibility of extending our efforts to really crack this prison planet so that you can be free, is we got to knock down the entire system. The entire system is the control effort. The entire system is the bad ETs. They've had millions of years to figure out how to do this exactly. Now, the only issue is we have now a population on the planet Earth that's got 8 billion. That's a lot of people, even for them to manage all at once. So the bad ETs themselves would probably like to cut this planetary population down a lot. I don't know how much, half, down to a third of what it is, to make it more manageable. They still have control of the Isbis, the immortal spiritual beings, what you might call the soul or spirits. They can capture all of that and keep them in the prison system. But in terms of biological beings, 8 billion people is sort of hard to control. So it's likely that the bad ETs are looking for ways to cut that down. And that's one of the reasons you're seeing sort of wars sort of spring up. So we're expecting 2026 to have the potential to be much worse than 2025, as the Prime Minister of Italy has stated. Okay. So what is really going on now is that 2026 is the beginning of our ability to crash the system. And once the system crashes, finally people's hypnotic gaze, hypnotic focus on the information that they've been fed all this time can be broken. People won't just look and say, what's the president saying? Well, give us the truth. They'll start talking to their neighbors. They'll start talking interactively, person with people that they know. And now let's bring this back to relationships between men and women. If men and women were able to talk with each other, which they cannot do now, but if they were able to talk with each other, they could come to common ground. They could understand that what is really important is connection, emotional support. It's not money. How many times I've heard, I can't count how many times I've heard someone say, I'm just out for the money. What do you bring to the table? I want to know about your bag. What? That didn't used to happen. You have to break that down and say, the only thing that really matters is communication, community, context, the person. And you have to start thinking, is this person a nice person? Not, does this person have a bag? Is this person a nice person who I think I'd like to go to the movies with or go to dinner with? Would the conversation be nice? That's what you have to think about. Interpersonal connections. Now, that doesn't mean you ignore whether the person's a deadbeat or not. I mean, obviously you're interested to know that the person can hold their own, that they have a job or something like that. But on the same side though, you want to know, after the sort of basic preliminaries, you just want to know, is the person sort of a reasonable person to talk with, to be friends with? Communication. that doesn't happen anymore, especially between men and women. And it doesn't happen anymore between nations. And it doesn't happen between people in society. Everyone's yelling at each other. The different ideologies, the different people, the different groups, the different coasts, the inside of the country, the coasts of the country, everybody's just yelling at each other. No one's just sitting down and saying, "Hi, and what's your name? Maybe we should get to know each other." What? No one's doing that anymore. And that type of personal interaction can only occur if the information control system that holds you in hypnotic locks can break down. 2026 appears to us at Farsight is the year where that's being geared up to ignite for the breakdown. Now, the ETs are very careful. We work with what we call the good ETs, and yes, we have meetings and things like that, which we video record and show you and the whole thing. They've only once told us exact dates, and that the only time they showed us exact dates, which I was sort of holding my heart in my hands when we published it, was on November 13th in 2024, and they told us that they were going to show up with ships, hundreds and thousands of ships. They're going to show up with ships, and they were going to be flying all over the place, and we should tell everybody to go out with their normal cell phone cameras and just record everything. There'll be no stealth technology, and you won't need any special equipment to record them. We published it on November 15th, and on November 18th, the so-called drones exploded everywhere, all over the world. And the government didn't know what it was, and I was in the U.S. at the time, and the U.S. government was saying, "We don't know what it is," for months. Okay. And then they came up with crazy stories that nobody believes. But the point is that the ETs tried to show you that just showing up with the ships was not going to be enough. The information control system could control even that, even thousands of ships coming out all over the world at the same time. So that was the only time the ETs told us something with a specific date on it. Now, often we infer dates and we sort of say it's going to happen this time or that time, but that's the only time they actually themselves told us a date. So I'm speculating now, but I'm looking at world events, and I'm looking at how things are developing, and I'm listening to what the ETs are telling us, and I have to put two and two together, which means I could be wrong. But from the way we're seeing it now, 2026 looks like a collapse year. And 2027 looks like deep in the dungeon type collapse. That's when the collapse is like fully embedded, that type of a thing. That's what it looks like to us. Again, we could be wrong, but it looks like the crises which trigger the collapse happen in 2026, and then in 2027 it's deep. So that's how I'm looking at it. Again, the ETs have not told us specific dates, but the way I'm looking at it, that's what it sounds like to me. And I hope we do get some more dates. And the ETs have explained to us why they don't give us specific dates. They say this is a war. It's a real war. And the other side is adapting and modifying what they're doing based on what we're doing. So it's back and forth. So it's hard to give exact dates. The only thing they could give an exact date for was the showing up of the ships, because they could control that completely. So this is a war, and a war is not something that you just say is going to happen on a certain day. Okay. Now let me pivot a little bit and talk a little bit about 3-Eye Atlas. We had a new video done by my son Aziz on 3-Eye Atlas, and we were predicting some type of event to occur that would be visible with some telescopes that would look like a gaseous emission or something coming out of the 3-Eye Atlas, and indeed stuff like that seems to have been happening. So again, we're not expecting the governments to sort of fess up about that or tell you what it is, but we were expecting, as 3-Eye Atlas leaves the inner parts of the solar system, gets farther away from the sun, you should have significantly fewer gaseous emissions and things like that. But we have predicted something major would happen, and that's because there's going to be an attack on 3-Eye Atlas. 3-Eye Atlas is actually a rock, an asteroid, but it's got stuff inside it, a ship. it's got extraterrestrial stuff inside it. So it's like a disguised ship. And it's really not disguised for advanced ETs because they can see right through that. But it is disguised for humans to look at easily. Anyway, our remote viewing stuff clearly said that that was going to be attacked. And that, what we would probably see from Earth is something that looks like gaseous emissions. I don't know if it's the end of it, but they seem to have been starting, maybe ending, maybe it's the whole thing. But you should keep track of things that are happening with 3i Atlas all through January to be able to see everything that possibly could happen. It may have already happened, but it may actually still be there. And we had some other new projects that were just released that I want you to understand. We're not releasing anything anymore that is not enhanced. We call it Farsight 3.0, with new graphics, new animation techniques, new other things. So if you haven't seen 3i Atlas, you definitely need to go see that. That one we posted fully on YouTube as well as FarsightPrime.com. Now the one with Yeme, which is on the Antarctica infrastructure of the military base, that we published in full only on FarsightPrime.com, but there's a 2-minute trailer on YouTube. We have to push this stuff up on FarsightPrime.com for 2 reasons. We get maybe $200 or $300 a month from YouTube. We can't pay for anything. Our monthly expenses are about $30,000 a month. So there's no possible way we could survive by putting everything up on YouTube. In addition, cancel culture. If we put the stuff that we have on YouTube, on FarsightPrime.com on YouTube, we could be canceled in a blink of an eye. So A, we couldn't create the content, and B, it could be destroyed. YouTube is not our streaming service. It's a streaming service that's owned by Google that puts up information, videos that are created by a user base out there. So rather than have to pay for movies and other things that they put up, they just let anybody create what they want, and then they select what they let people see. So they select it by shadow banning so that you can put something up but nobody can see it because nobody can find it. That happens a lot with Google and YouTube. So we can't rely on YouTube for anything, but we have to let people know what we have, and what we have is on FarsightPrime.com. So we really encourage you to follow us on FarsightPrime.com and to watch everything we have. We've also started to put out more short form videos, which are like 20 minutes to 30 minutes. And we're doing that because the attention span for people to watch long form stuff is shortening, but we put out the same quantity of stuff, the same total minutes in a month, but they're in short form. And also it allows us to focus more on these new presentational approaches. So if we're doing something that's animation, like the one we just did with Yeme, that took us a long time to get right. Now, our future animation things won't take quite so long because we now know the pipeline much better. But that took us a long time. And it was expensive for us, not just in time, but in money. So for us to do that was a learning curve that we really had to go through. But we basically know that learning curve now. And you're going to be seeing improvements in the way we do everything constantly. We're always thinking about ways to do what we do better, because you can't get any of our content anywhere else. You can't get it on Disney, Paramount Plus, Hulu, Netflix, anything. You can only get it here. Other places are not willing to show it. So this is where you get the information. So we have to make it the highest quality information that you can possibly get, delivered in the best possible ways. All right, everybody. That's what we do. So I want to thank everybody for following us on FarsightPrime.com and for listening to us on YouTube with the spotlights. Now these spotlights I do put up on YouTube fully, so people can sort of get an overview of the stuff we're doing. However, I do want to say that we always put up the live streams, as a live stream, but then we edit them because we have to make sure the audio is perfect, and we have to. If I cough, I have to cut out the cough, and also we add graphics to it and stuff like that. So later on tonight or tomorrow morning, you'll see the edited version of this exact live stream. Looks better, sounds better, and that goes up as a regular video, and then we take down the live stream. So that's our particular process. Some podcasters, if they do a live stream, they just keep it up as a live stream, but we don't like to do that. We like to start it out as a live stream so everybody can see and get it fresh right off the tracks. And then we edit it to improve it. Okay, so the edited version of this live stream will go up either later tonight or tomorrow. Okay? One final thing. When you're looking at the instability of 2026, I want to really emphasize one thing. 2026 may be harder, perhaps much harder, than 2025. But that does not mean it's hopeless. No, it does not mean it's hopeless. Times of instability are also times when vision matters the most. And those who can see clearly can choose differently. Farsight will continue to illuminate, not to control, not to coerce, but to help you see what is actually happening. Bottom line, the future is not shaped by those who dominate. It is shaped by those who understand. You guys are great. You're my best friends. And listen, everybody, I'm going to be looking forward to seeing you next week. Now, you see how my cold is getting better? I'm still sniffling a little bit and coughing a little bit, but it's not nearly as bad as it was last week, so I'm getting better. So this is great, and the new year is coming next in just a few days, and so the next spotlight will be the first spotlight in January. Let's hang in there together with us on this roller coaster of a train going through time. Hang in there with us, and we'll hang in there with you. See you all next week, next Sunday. Take care, everybody.